let's get started. It's 11 o'clock Eastern Time. I am Bob Graham, and what we are going to be talking through today is managing remotely, the smart way to ensure that work actually gets done. And before we get too far into this presentation, I want to tell you that we are really blessed. Keith Daw of Sandler Training is actually on, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to get him to be able to participate. I'm doing a little magic right here. Keith, are you able to talk right now?
Absolutely. Good morning.
There you go. Keith is with us. Keith and I talk all the time. He is really involved in high-level leadership and coaching, training on sales, and he's been kind enough to participate in this webinar with me. So Keith, I'm going to give you the unique privilege. I don't even do this for my wife. I'm going to tell you that you can jump in at any time you wish. So just shut me up whenever you see something that you want to contribute to, and I will be happy to have you participate. How's that sound?
That's a privilege, and I won't repeat it because I don't want you sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, especially not these days when we're all working from home, right? So let's get started. You can see right here on the first slide, I want to create for you a simple and repeatable process to ensure that your employees are productive when they're working from home. That is the name of the game. I know a lot of people are in the position now of having employees work from home for the very first time. They may have never had their employees work from home, and suddenly they're forced to deal with this challenge. I get it. I've been there. I've done that. And so let's get right into it, okay? If my slides will advance. There it goes. If you want to interact with me today, I am working alone. Keith is with me, but I'm managing the technology myself. So if you've got a question, feel free to put it in the chat box or in the question answer box. No problem with that. Just put it in there. I'll try to integrate them as I go. I'm a firm believer in providing people what they need to see, talk about as it goes. I'd prefer you not to hold your questions till the end. So jump in at any time. The more we can have that dialogue through chat, the better off it is. You can see a lovely picture of me. So that's always available to you if you want to look at me, a lovely shot. And then let me move right on to the next slide. And I'm going to make a big promise here because I believe that you have to make a big promise. And by the way, those of you who do a lot of webinars, there is not going to be a sales pitch today, okay? I'm not making a sales pitch. So this is not one of those webinars where at the end I give you 10 minutes of some incredibly great offering that's going to change your life, because frankly, the situation we find ourselves in today is far too serious to be making sales offers. My hope today, my promise to you is that I want you to be able to lead better, and I want you to have a clear process that will allow you to better manage your remote employees. That is the name of the game here today. So this is not going to be a bait and switch. This is not going to be me telling you this is what I do, and then to get the real stuff, it's going to cost you more money. That is not going to happen, okay? Just want to be real clear at the onset, because I do a lot of webinars and they usually have a pitch. Not going to happen today. So let me tell you a little bit about me. Here's a nice picture of me, and I'm going to play. I rarely play the guitar publicly, like next to never. So I try to go through this. This helps me go through my who and what I am really quickly. So in a second, you should hear the guitar play. There you go. This forces me not to talk a lot about who I am. But you can see I've developed 2 companies. I've coached, trained, and interviewed thousands of leaders. I do co-host a podcast. Actually, I host it. I'm not sure why it says co-host. And I've worked with at-home teams. I've led them. And I've also helped people working with remote teams reduce costs and generate more productivity. So in a second, I'm going to start to sing. And that's my cue to move to the next slide. See how I do that? Isn't that great? Yeah, there you go. Okay. Wow, that was painful, but it works. So if you have questions about me, you can find that. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place. That's not important right now. Just know that this webinar is for you if you're managing teams and they're working at home for the first time. And I find a whole lot of people in that situation. I've been talking to a lot of people struggling with that issue. Like, I never wanted to have my employees work at home, and now they're home. Or perhaps you're someone who's struggled in the past with employees who are working remotely. You had them working at home and you didn't feel like you were as effective or successful as you could be. Got some strategies for you there on how you can be more successful. Or maybe you're worried about your employees at home actually doing the work, because I just checked on TBS, Friends is on straight through today. The Office is on. They've got movies, there's talk shows. Netflix has a full roster, Hulu, all these things. And you're worried that your employees are goofing off. I totally get it. I went there when I was working with employees who were working from home and I was leading them. That was my number one concern. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then maybe you find it difficult. You're someone who's working at home, whether you're leading a team, managing, or just running your own shop. You're working at home and you're finding it difficult just to be motivated to get things done. We're going to give you some suggestions here because some of the suggestions for a manager can work for someone leading a team, but they can also work for someone who's leading himself or herself. So that's the frame I want to give this. After this webinar, you're going to have a repeatable process for managing work from home. I know it's hard to believe, but it's possible. You're also going to know how best to guide your employees when they're working from home. And you're going to know what gets in your way, what can get in your way. Boy, I know all about that. And how to avoid it. And so that's really the goal here, is to give you those actionable suggestions so you can move forward. So I want to start with a question because this always helps to get people thinking about what's going on in their world and what's real for them. So what's your biggest fear about having employees working from home? If you'd be kind enough to put some of those answers in the question box or chat box, I would love to see what you're saying. I know for me, my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to know what they were doing, and it was going to make things really difficult for me in that workplace. Keith, you've led some people remotely, right?
Many times.
So what's your biggest fear? What was your biggest fear?
So my biggest fear was the unknown on their part from a performance standpoint. There were some who didn't know what they were or weren't allowed to do. Do I copy one person on the email, everybody on the email? There was a lot of those unknowns on the part of those being remote. It was less about my fear that they would be goofing off or not be productive.
That's great. I love that. I also have someone, Neil's on the call or on this webinar, and he's saying that they will go nuts being at home. That's his biggest fear, which is a great suggestion, Neil, because I think we're all going to run the risk of going nuts. And I've got some suggestions for how to address the possibility. So that's great. Other common fears that I've heard from people expressed, not doing their jobs. They're just not going to work. They're going to say they're working from 9 to 5, but they're really not. Not being honest about the work they're doing. So I was working with someone a couple of years ago and they were saying, oh, I'm going to meet the deadline. And then they didn't because they weren't doing the work. Not meeting deadlines, like I just said. I mean, that's a real big thing. If you're deadline driven, when someone's working from home, you can't look over their shoulder and see where they are. I used to work for a company where we edited documents. So the boss could come around at any point and watch us and see how far in that 400-page government document I had gotten in my editing. So if I was on page 30 and I had a week, she could say, Bob, we've got a problem here. You don't have that luxury when you're working remotely, when your employees are working remotely. One of the other things, and I think this one really underpins all of them, is not feeling like you're in control. There's a certain element of believing that you're in control when you can see your employees actually doing your work or their work. Keith, do you find that the case when you're dealing with leaders?
It depends. Again, I think part of it goes back to understanding roles and responsibilities. So I feel some are distracted by kids, animals, or other partner at the house. I feel some of them don't know perhaps what they are or aren't allowed to do. So I think the control part is a conversation that needs to happen at the very beginning with a leader to make sure everybody understands, again, what the rules of engagement are, if you will.
Yeah, the rules of the road are critical. And then the fifth thing I'll just throw out here is that most people go into this believing it's not going to work. About 3/4 of the people I've talked to in the last week about working remotely have said to me, all these leaders said to me the same thing. I don't think that people can do it. It's not going to work. And I think when you go in with that mindset, that probably colors your experience and probably damages the possibilities. So let me give you a little truth about working at home. And the statistics are really clear. There was a great study done a few years ago in China, of all places. And granted, it wasn't with the coronavirus and COVID-19 involved, but they actually found in a typical week, and this was a study of 2,000 employees, when they worked at home, they actually had 1 day of additional productivity per week. That means that they got a day's worth of additional stuff done in a week. The employees also said their concentration rose and that the company saved $2,000 per employee in rent. Now that's amazing. Those are great numbers in and of themselves. But let me tell you where they had things go down. There were fewer distractions, fewer breaks, fewer sick days, less time off, and amazingly, attrition, employees leaving the company, went down by 50%. And they attribute a lot of that to the fact that the employees were able to build a more flexible work schedule. And we'll talk about some of that. So working from home can work. That's a reality. So if you can accept that as a possibility, it's going to improve your chances dramatically in having success with this. So here are some of the issues that employees face. And I put this slide here because I want you to think about this from your employees' perspective for a minute, because most of the leaders, managers, owners I'm talking to are totally in their own world when it comes to dealing with their employees working at home. And it's really critical to understand these statistics. And this comes from the State of Remote Report 2019 version. And you can see the link down at the bottom if you want to go further into it. But 22% of employees worried about being unplugged after work. That was one of their fears. Could they get away from work? Because if you're working at home, the wall between being home and at work is much harder to find, believe me. They were worried about being lonely. They're worried about collaboration and communication, being distracted, being in a different time zone, staying motivated, finding time to take vacation, and then also the last one on that list, finding reliable Wi-Fi. And I think this is a potential issue we're going to face right now. Being at home, working at home with so many people working from home, there are potential issues with technology, and we need to be aware of it. And I would tell you, this slide is a slide that I want you to sort of internalize in terms of what are your employees looking at and how can you help them? So the idea of being able to unplug after work, a good leader is probably going to find ways to say, look, we're going to work from these hours to these hours, and after 8 p.m. or after 7 p.m. or after 4 p.m., whatever that number is, we're not going to call or email. And if you email me or chat with me after 4 p.m., we're not going to pick it up until 7 a.m. tomorrow. It's just not going to happen. So if someone chooses to work at midnight, that's their choice. But it doesn't mean someone has to respond at midnight. And then when it comes to loneliness, we're going to talk about some strategies for overcoming loneliness. Okay? So let me keep going. The name of the game is being successful with business. And often in business, we look at the world this way. We start at a place and our goal is to get to the top, and we want to do a straight line. And I've used this graphic before. This is Mount Everest, and I'm not going to talk about what country it's in because last time I did that, I was way off, and I'm not going to go there. Actually, it might be Mount Etna. Now I'm totally questioning myself. And Keith can't help me with this because he's not a mountaineer guy, I don't think. But if you can, Keith, jump in, please.
So Mount Everest is in Nepal.
Then it's Mount Everest. Thank you very much. I have a mental block about Mount Everest. It's sad. It's scary. So this is Mount Everest. People want to scale to the top of this mountain all the time. This is one of the toughest mountains in the world to climb. But you can't do a straight line climb like what you see here. That would be so easy. In some ways, it would be quick, but you can't do it. You have to do it this way. And and it tells me Mount Everest on this slide, which is great. So you can see you have to take steps. It's got to be, you've got to go to camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, and then finally to the summit. And then you've also got to factor in the weather. You've got to factor in oxygen. You've got a lot of factors involved. Do you have enough food? All those things come into climbing Mount Everest. And I would tell you, the reason I use this slide today, we are climbing Mount Everest. I don't want to be doom and gloom. I do not want to be negative, but we are scaling something with the world we find ourselves in today that is far higher up in the air than we've climbed before. We're seeing changes in how we have to interact, how we get work done, what work looks like. And if you're managing people, this is going to feel like Mount Everest to you. And people who go up Mount Everest train for months and months and months. And unfortunately, in this situation for us in business, we're not in the position where we were able to train for months and months. This came kind of quickly, and we're dealing with it day to day. So as we look at this, we need a better process. We need a system. We need a way that we can do things. And so I want to talk about a repeatable and predictable process. And I really want to hammer away at the idea of repeatable and predictable. The process I'm about to show you, the SMART process, is going to be something that you can apply to any situation. I'm going to apply it today to how to be effective in managing people from home, but that doesn't mean you can't apply it to other situations. I've built it. I've applied it to all kinds of situations, personal and professional. So as you go through this, think about and take some notes and think about how you can apply it in other situations. And the goal here is to build this process so that you can better leverage your strengths so you can have a bigger impact. The bigger impact can be to be more productive, to be productive when you're working from home and your employees are from home, or to have a bigger impact just to get through these difficult days, okay? So with that set up, here's my SMART process. And this is a 5-step process that I've built that's designed to, as you see here, create performance and profit. And you can see it sort of looks like a rocket ship or an engine. That's intentional. The goal here is that you're going to be able to accelerate your growth, accelerate your success, whatever it is. So you can see these 5 steps: strategize, market, act, review, and track. Now, I will tell you, this is not rocket science. Haha, excuse the pun. I've never said that before. That's kind of funny. This is not rocket science, but in some ways it is, because often we don't take time to think through things. We don't have a process. We just go to our to-do list, write it on a to-do list, and do the next thing on the list. And that's not going to be the way to be successful going forward. This is going to require this kind of process. So let me apply each of these steps to managing and leading from home, okay? But first, this process is going to give you clarity, it's going to give you a focus to lock in on, and it's going to minimize the risk of you finding things that get in your way. And so often what we find with leaders and managers is that they get in their own way. So we're going to minimize that possibility here. Sound good? Great. Here we go. All right, so first, strategize. This is an area that I see a lot of folks not taking the full time to do. They have an idea and they implement the idea. They don't think about the implications. And I will tell you, when you have employees working from home, strategy is really critical. You've got to be in charge. You've got to be in control. You've got to be righting the ship. The ship, you've got to be guiding them. I like to think of the coxswain in a boat where they're rowing. You have all the people rowing and the person saying row, 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 and they're pointing, they're guiding them in the direction. That's what you have to be in the leader right now. First step in strategizing, you need to review the organizational priorities. And I say review because organizational priorities may be very different today than they were a day, a week, or a month ago. And they may be very different tomorrow, because what was the world that we were in a week ago may not be the world we're in today. For instance, there's a shop near me that sells pizzas, and I went by there. They are no longer allowing people to come in and buy pizzas in the shop. They're not allowed by law now. The law changed last night at 5 p.m. Today, they can only do carry out and delivery. So their staff had to shift how they do things. Another company I was talking to was talking about how they've completely shifted themselves from a sales company to a service company. Instead of going out and trying to find new customers, their salespeople are right now today making calls from home to their clients to support them. What do you need? How are your employees working from home? What are the issues they're finding? How can we help you in this difficult time? So the strategy of a week ago, you need to make 40 sales calls and you need to generate this much revenue for that company, is suddenly you need to make this many calls and you need to help our current customers see the value in what we're offering them. And then after you review those organizational priorities, you want to identify the tasks that can be done remotely. Everything cannot be done remotely. This is one of the mistakes I made when I first managed a team from home. I thought that they could do everything they always did, but the reality is there are certain tasks that are difficult to do at home. Yes, you can have a Zoom call, but it's hard to brainstorm in an online forum. I find that can be difficult. It's possible, but not easy. So the ideal is things that people can do independently. The other reason why independent work is best is because you can track the results. If someone's working independently, if my job is to make 14 calls today, then you can track, did I make those calls? Who did I make the calls to? If it's a broader goal like make sure everyone reads this document, that's a little more vague and it's a little hard to manage. The other thing is, in a perfect world, and this is going to change, you don't want to have time-sensitive work. Yes, there's going to be time-sensitive work, but the less time-sensitive, the better it's going to be. Especially at the beginning of this, you want to give people the sea legs. You want them to feel comfortable working at home. And I can tell you, if you have employees working at home this week for the first time, they are not going to be able to do as much as they normally did. They are going to be completely out of their element. I'm working today in my dining room because I needed to have a hardwire to the internet, not Wi-Fi, to be able to do this call effectively. So I'm in my dining room. I'm not in my basement office at my house, and everything is out of whack. I'm looking outside right now, and there are mourning doves bombarding my porch. They're getting ready to move in, I think. And I've got kids outside who are playing, and I'm worried that they're going to come over because they can see me through the window. Thankfully, my wife is not home right now. She will be home a little later. I think I told her I was doing this, and I think she specifically avoided being home because she knew it would not be a good environment. So you want to make sure that as you understand, it's going to take people to get time to get accustomed to working from home. It's not the same surroundings. It's not the same setup. It's not the same getting up in the morning. For a lot of people, believe it or not, that drive to work is very therapeutic. It helps them get in the work zone. Often people will think about what they're trying to do, what are my goals for today, and without that, it's going to be more challenging. I would also tell you, your employees also use the time after work when they're driving home or commuting to decompress from work, and it's harder to decompress when you don't get away. So keep that in mind. Recognize that possibility, recognize that reality, because it could be something that you're going to have to confront as you go forward. I've got a comment from Keith that Zoom breakout sessions provide opportunities for a couple groups to chat among themselves and then bring it back to the overall group with a couple key actionable steps. Keith, do you want to talk more about that?
So sure. So I've had same thing as we're talking through, how do I communicate to my teams? How do I keep my pipeline going? How do I deal with clients? All these different things. And we've had, 30, 40 people on at one time. As you mentioned, it could be, a complete cluster. So what we've done is been able to put them into different breakout groups, talk about this for 4 or 5 minutes, come up with a couple points, and then somebody brings those top 1 or 2 to the group, as opposed to having 90 things thrown out there and then we have to sift through it all.
I think that's great, Keith. Yeah, it is funny. One of the things I see organizations do that is to their detriment is they try to have big meetings. on Zoom or on Skype or however. And I find the smaller the group, the better. I mean, the ideal team of 3 to 5 people is where I see the sweet spot in terms of getting done. And I've seen a couple of companies where they'll actually break teams into sub teams to make sure that they avoid having too many people on a call. Have you ever done that kind of thing, Keith, or recommended that?
Had too many on a call, or keeping it
Yeah,
to 3 to 5?
but both.
Yeah, so I keep it to 3 to 5 because we've had too many on a call, and usually I'm more of a participant on those as opposed to one facilitating it. Hence why we'll use the breakout sessions, and it might be the ops team in one group, sales team in another group, customer service in another, and that way they can share their own perspectives as opposed to just sometimes putting people in random groups.
Absolutely. I think that's a great recommendation. I think dividing them in logical ways is really a good thing. And it also forces, this is one of the opportunities here. I think it forces organizations to really think about what their teams are and how those teams operate in a way that around the water cooler, people tend to gravitate to the people they need to work with. This is going to feel artificial at first, but I think you'll find your way as you start to figure out what people do together to achieve the work. And then just to get done strategizing, you really need to create an actionable to-do list. And I know to-do list is implied that's actionable, but what I find is often people put things on the to-do list that are never going to get done. This is a time to be really strategic and not to have a to-do list of 30 things. This should be a to-do list of 2 or 3 things that the person can do in that day that you can track. Because one of the things that you can talk to employees about is they don't feel the sense of accomplishment when they're working from home. So if you can help them feel like they achieved something, that they achieved a milestone, that's going to help tremendously. Which brings us into the second step, which is marketing. Now, you may say marketing, I'm not a marketing person, but I'm using marketing a little differently. Marketing, how you share the information, how you tell your employees what to do, how you have that discussion around the work being done. And the key is to have a discussion. If you dictate what they need to do, in fact, I was working with a company at one point and they were emailing the people working from home, do this, do this, do this. And the employees hated that email, hated it, because they felt like they were being dictated what they had to do. It works much better if you work together with your team members, with your employees. What is it you're trying to accomplish? Identify what the things are that they need to accomplish, set up milestones. The person may say, you know what? I need you to check in on me every 2 hours. If that's the case, if someone can be that thoughtful and that careful in their logic, hey, you know what? I would be checking in with that person every two hours. If they say, hey, you know what? A check-in every day would be great. That's beautiful. Also setting real deadlines, not imaginary deadlines or, oh, if you get done by Friday, that would be good. One of the things about managing people remotely is deadlines have to be serious. They have to understand, you have to understand those deadlines. And the deadline, a project that may have taken a week, a month ago, may actually take 7 to 10 days now. It may take longer than ever because there are distractions. Think of it from the employee perspective. They may have their children at home, and I'm sorry, children are not going to go, mommy or daddy's working for 8 hours, you need to go in the room and play. Kids don't work that way. You may have distractions, just family issues. People have relatives, they're worried about their health, they're worried about issues. Neighbors may have issues. They may have concerns about getting food or getting medical care. They may have issues about maybe they're starting to feel bad and they may think they have the coronavirus, which would cause them to potentially miss deadlines. So having a sense of what those deadlines are and having a discussion around that at the front end and then being ready to modify that as needed is really important to be successful. And then also, what kind of method of check-in does a person want? Do they want you to Skype them? Do they want you to use the Microsoft chat? Do they want you to email? Do they want a phone call? Having that discussion. It's funny. I do coaching with clients and I always ask them, what's the best way to contact you? And some people like to be texted. Some people like email. Some people like a phone call. If I commit to that It works better when I'm approaching the person the way they want to be approached. Now you may say, well, I'm the manager. I want to deal with everyone by email. Well, here's the thing. You want to make sure that you're working to the aid of your employees. A good manager, a good leader is supporting his or her employees the best way they can. So it's what the employee needs that's going to guide you in what you do to help them be successful. Because in that way, the employee is going to take more ownership of what they're doing. And then both of you jointly have to commit to a schedule. What does that look like? What are the things that you're going to do? So are you going to make 15 calls today? And who are you making those calls to? And by the end of the day, I want to see a log of all the people you called and the outcome from those calls. And by the way, is that 15 people I called out to 15 people, I dialed their number and I got their answering machine, or is that I talked to 15 people? That's a big, big difference. And so being clear about that, making sure the language as you market this to yourself and to your employees is clear. And as you market this to yourself, I would tell you that I've seen employees who did not flourish in the workplace really flourish in the home environment. I know it's hard to believe, but it does happen sometimes. So give the possibility that that could in fact happen a chance. Don't preconceive that just because this person doesn't like working in the office and they're always slacking, they may flourish at home. In fact, you may at the end of this go, hey, I'm going to let them work at home because they are so much more engaged. I've seen that happen. So let me move to the next step, which is act. Get out of your employee's way. This is the number one way to act. You do not want to be micromanaging employees. I know you think you need to, but give them the space to be successful. And also, assume the best is going to happen. Really, don't set up on Monday morning next week and go, I know this is going to be a horrible week. It was a horrible week last week. Start each new day in a positive way and see what happens. And model that good behavior yourself. If you're requiring all your employees to be online at 8:30, you need to be online at 8:25. I've seen so many leaders and managers mandate things of their employees that they don't do themselves. And that's the number one way. And believe me, in this technology-driven world that we're in, everyone knows when everyone else is online. It's pretty easy to figure out. They also know if you're playing on Facebook at 11:27 or 11:42 while I'm speaking. It's not that hard to figure out. So if you're supposed to be working, if your employees are supposed to be working, make sure you're doing what you said you do and that they're doing what they said they do. But odds are they're going to do it. They want to be successful. Remember, employees need to have a job right now. They are scared. They are worried. They are not going to make the mistakes they might have made in this marvelous economy. We're all a little worried. I've got a comment from Neil who says, if you don't trust your employees, why did you hire them? That's a great comment, Neil. You always crystallize what I'm saying in great words. He also adds, it's about results, not 8 hours a day. And I think that's a real important step here to talk through, that you need to give them the space to get it done. Some people working at home are going to commit to like 4, 5, 6 hours of hardcore time, and they're going to get 8 hours of work done because they've got other needs that they need to take care of. The kids can't sit for 8 hours, like I said, or they may have a relative they have to deal with. So give them the space. The other space you need to give your employees is a space to vent. One of the things that we do in the office that we can't do as easily from home is, is share our frustrations. I know that seems weird, but you need to give people space to vent. And I would encourage you, if you're talking to your employees and you feel like they may be getting negative or worried, hey, do you just need a space to vent? Because I can listen. And set that up front. Don't listen and then at the end go, oh, so you hate your job, you want to quit. Most of the time, that's not the case. I don't know of anyone right now who's looking to quit a job. In this uncertain climate, people need their jobs desperately. So allow for the possibility that someone might actually want to vent. They might actually be worried and frustrated, and they may also have an issue with another employee, and you may have to referee it. One of the things that we see when people work at home is microaggressions, little issues become much bigger because they don't have the ability to go down the hall and go, "You're not going to believe what John just did." And then the person listens and now you're over it. Now they're at home, it's festering, and it becomes much worse than it would have been. So allowing people the space to vent, allowing them to express their frustrations, and dealing with any problems immediately is critical to success, really critical. Am I making sense so far? I hope so. Let me keep going. We've got 2 more steps on the SMART process. Step 4 is review. If you scheduled a check-in session with your employees, be on time or early. I can't tell you how much that sends a signal. If you're not there when you're supposed to, employees are going to go, "You know what? I'm not going to be there when I'm supposed to." Imagine if this webinar had started at 11:06, not 11 o'clock. What would that say about me? What would that say about my willingness to do this? It's inexcusable. So be on time, even better, be early. And respond. If you're doing email check-ins, respond quickly to their email. Do not let those emails pile up for 3, 4, 5 days. Even if it's just they gave you the steps of what they've done, then just, "Hey, appreciate your hard work, John. Keep it up." That quick response as soon as possible reminds them that you are there, that you are holding up your end of the bargain. Lead by example. The next thing I would tell you is coach, don't criticize. Everyone needs their job. I can't tell you how important it is to have your job and be successful and keep your job right now. Think about your situation. Would you like to not have a job right now? Are you going to do anything to challenge your job right now? Probably not. Your employees are going to feel the same way. So this is a really good time to coach them. They want to be successful. Coaching is different than criticizing. Criticizing is, "I can't believe you missed that deadline." Coaching is, "Hey, so what happened with that deadline?" And then they tell you, like, "Okay, well, how can we strategize?" Notice I went back to that word. How can we find a strategy that's going to overcome the challenge? And that challenge may be something very real to them that you're thinking, "Oh, well, I can't deal with it." Like, "My children are driving me crazy. I can't get 2 hours to work." Okay, how can I help you make that work? You're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to accept realities. This is part of where we are right now. You can't just assume that they're going to shut the door of their office at home or in the closet or in the kitchen and no one's going to come through and get food. The kids aren't going to fight. That the neighbor's not going to say, "Do you have any hand sanitizer I can use?" That is reality. And if you can't accept the realities, you're going to struggle with this. I can tell you right now. But remember the statistics. If you can give people the space to be successful, they will be successful. They will find a way to overcome the distractions. They may not work 9 to 5. They may get the work done at 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. But guess what? If they get the results, if they meet the deadlines, you're all about that. So I can't explain enough how important it is to make sure that you're giving people the space to deal with reality. Finally, you want to track. That's the T in the SMART process. Track. Quantify as much as possible. Are they hitting their goals? Are they hitting their goals early, which is a great sign? And that was one of the things when I managed teams from home, I was amazed. They often met deadlines early. It's like, how'd you get this done in 2 days? Well, you know, I stayed up late the other night because I was worried about it and I got it done. It's like, oh, that's bravo. Excellent. Love it. Love it. If they're hitting deadlines, are they achieving more than you expected? If so, share those results. Share good results widely. Tell your whole team, "Hey, just want to let you know, Steve made not just 15 calls today, he made 31 calls today, and he talked to 28 different people." That's Steve, bravo, that's amazing. Tammy did all these things today. She was supposed to get this report done by the end of the week. She got it done on Wednesday. Tammy, can you tell us how you got that done so quickly? Well, I found that there were some things. Oh, that's great. That's amazing. Track things track things, have your employees track things. One of the things that I think helps with employees is helping them to be able to track their own progress. Really, really critical. I've got a comment from Kevin here. One of the comments I get from supervisors is they can't track that their employees are being productive if they're teleworking. And I usually ask them, how much are they checking on them in the workplace normally? Most of the time there isn't any interaction. So it's a false argument. Kevin, I couldn't agree more. One of the things that managing people working at home is really great in, it forces you to actually manage people and interact with your people. You can't expect them to just get done and then have the annual review in December and go, hey, so that was a great year. How's it going? You've got to be involved with them more intimately. It's really critical to have that ability to engage with people. And I'm going to tell you another thing. Your employees are looking for that engagement. They expect and they need you to be there. They are uncomfortable working at home. They are scared. They are worried. They're worried that you think that they're slacking off. Every employee I've ever talked to who works from home says the same thing. I was worried for a long time that they thought I was slacking off. Why do you think employees can't find the break between work and play? Why do you think they work 50 hours, not 40 hours when they work from home? Because they're scared to death that someone is not paying attention, that they think that they're not doing their job. I've got a comment from Neil. Leaders should take time to empathize and understand that this is new territory to many. Celebrating helps people create habits. When they feel good, they want to repeat behaviors. That's right, Neil. It's just like dealing with dogs. You know, if your dog does the right thing, you reward it with a treat or you pet it. People need the same thing. We are all animals at our core. And the more we can recognize that, good behavior needs to be supported and bad behavior should not be criticized. And I would tell you at this point, one of the worst things you could possibly say is, hey, you know what? If you can't get this straight, I'll find someone else to do it. That is not what you want to be saying right now. This is a really difficult climate. You do not want to go anywhere close to having the need to fire someone. Coach, don't criticize. As Neil says here, bad behavior needs to be coached. And I agree with that completely. This is an opportunity. Seize the opportunity. So that's the SMART process. I want to go a little deeper, but first, am I making sense so far? What do you think, people? Can I get a Y if I'm making sense? That's good. Great. Super. I'm going to keep going now. I've got a couple more hints. I wanted to give a couple of things just real quick that didn't fit into my structure of my SMART process. No one wants to fail. You don't want to fail and your employees do not want to fail. And people are really worried about their jobs and their pay. If you work for a company that suddenly has shipped you to working at home and that company's doing something that might not be in high demand right now. So for instance, if you're at a travel agency, who's going to travel? Or if you're in my field where I do some speaking, who's going to hire a speaker right now? If you were working for me, wouldn't you be worried about your job if you were working at home? So you want to make sure you recognize those fears and address them. Give people the space to share their concerns. Give them a point of safety so that they can move to a point of achieving results. You also want, I said earlier, but I want to be real clear, expect great things. Every time I've led a team that worked remotely, I've been overwhelmed by their success. Now, it wasn't always pretty. There were a couple of tough days here and there, but they did have success and they achieved more than I expected. The setbacks they seemed very big initially. You know, someone missed a deadline or there's miscommunication or a document didn't get put in the right online folder and we had a whole stress over that. But once we sorted out those little headaches, and most of those, frankly, were procedural. We didn't have really good procedures in place. Once we built the framework, that was when success started to come. And that may be something that you want to think about. What are your processes? And I will tell you right now, if you have processes for doing things and people are working from home, they will test those processes and you will see what works and what doesn't work in your process. Make sure if it's the process, not the people, that you blame the process, not the people. And then focus on milestones and deadlines, not the person. People will achieve the results. You just got to give them the opportunity and the space. Couple more things, be positive. I can't, look, folks, it's a difficult day. I'm not going to lie. I can't lie to you, but I'm trying to be very positive right now. I'm trying not to be the person who's sitting here going, oh, you're in trouble, your business is going to go out of business. That's not going to help. Be positive about your company. Be positive about the opportunities, because there are opportunities here. There is an opportunity to be successful. There is an opportunity for innovation. And we are going to need to keep going. We're not going to just curl up into a ball. So be positive, and be positive when people achieve any result, especially as they start working from home. Any positive result, be positive about. Celebrate successes. I mean, celebrate. If I had a team that was working with me, my first thing, if we met a deadline Friday, I would record a crazy video of me dancing to, I don't know, Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. And I would share that with the team to really give them a sense of this is important. And I would do something completely atypical, really funny, really out of character to show them how important this is, and also to show them that I can loosen up. Be human. Be yourself. Let them see you as you are in your home. Let them see the bookshelf behind you that's messed up. Let them see that your paint is falling off your wall. You don't have to be perfect to your employees right now. They want to feel like you're human. You're going to be able to coach them more. You're going to be able to do more with them if you're human. Keith, what do you have to add?
Nothing to add. I think at some point being a little vulnerable, recognizing that you do not have to have all the answers, and your team would like you to, but also understands that sometimes you're building this as we go along and that they're part of it. To echoing a part you said a long time ago, though, is managing schedules and expectations, to be able to have that conversation with the team. And if they have other people at home with them, to make certain maybe your normal hours are 8:30 to 5, but right now it might be more of a 10 to 6 or 10 to 4 and 7 to 9, figuring out what those hours are and understanding they might be a lot more chaotic and flexible or varied than they were before.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think those hours could change by day. If people have issues, it may be that I know some companies that are talking about going to 3 or 4 day work weeks, just to give them more time to be able to work with their children and deal with their children, because childcare is going to be an issue. And I think one of the keys, I didn't put on a slide, but we really have to strive towards more flexibility. Now, Kevin, can you do me a favor? You've got an event coming up later today that I want you to explain, because I think it's a really good next step for the people who are involved here.
So 4 o'clock this afternoon, I have a webinar.
Eastern time, right?
Yes, correct. Eastern time, webinar that's talking about DISC, our hardwire communication behavioral styles, to both communicating in the aspects you're talking about here from a leadership stuff, understanding we all have different communication styles. So we're going to respond or feel more comfortable or uncomfortable. So that D and dominant style might be thinking more about hey, just figure it out, or we'll figure it out, don't worry about it. Whereas others are going to miss that social distancing, feel isolated. Some are going to be resistant to change. Others are going to say, well, there's no precedent from it, and they're going to seek for guidance. So whether it's leadership, sales, customer service, just understanding that dynamic in our internal and external clients.
I think that's a great next step. I think that's part of being an effective leader, is understanding people's preferences and styles and how to appeal to that and work with that. And I can tell you, I've seen Kevin give presentation. Keith give presentations, and he is really dynamic and exciting. And I've never seen him give a presentation where I didn't walk away with some really good aha moments. So I will be on there at 4 o'clock Eastern time today. Keith, if anyone wants to get in touch with you about that, what's the easiest way to reach you?
Easiest way would be via LinkedIn. Just Keith, last name is Daw, D-A-W, and I'll make sure they have the link to register. Obviously complimentary, just need to make sure they register so they can get the link to to the event because it's a one-time thing and it will be recorded.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to keep going. Thank you for that, Keith.
Thank you.
I'm going to do another webinar on Thursday, the 19th, in 2 days at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, talking about working from home when the novelty wears off. So how to deal with those issues related to your family, how to get and stay in the work zone, and what to avoid at all costs. I've been down this road. I'm actually going to be going down this road the next day. I almost said I fear, but that would be bad, but that's probably accurate. My wife and I will be working in the same home, I fear. And so I know exactly what I'm talking about. It will be fun for the first day. We might get to have lunch together, and then it's going to become complicated for us. And so I want to talk through those issues. I've got some strategies I've used in the past that really worked, especially for the last two, how to get and stay in the work zone and what to avoid at all costs. I will tell you this is going to be a really great webinar. If you're interested in that webinar, just shoot me an email or look for information on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or also on an email I'll send out either later today or first thing tomorrow. And then do we have any questions? I've covered a lot of ground quickly. I welcome any questions you might have. I'm looking. If you have questions, you can type them into the chat box. Looking to see if there's anything. Nothing so far. I can't be that good, people. Come on. That means one of three things. Either I put you to sleep, you've already moved to something else and you're not even listening, or you're so bamboozled that you can't possibly come up with a question. Now, Keith, you don't see that possibility, do you?
No, you did a fantastic job.
Well, that coming from you, that's high praise. Let me see. Do I have a question here? I'm trying to. I've got. It said that I have a question, but apparently, it is not there. So, let me just double check one more time. I know one of the questions that I often get about this is, if you could work in an office or work from home, which would you prefer? And the reality for me, and Keith, you might want to weigh in on this in a minute. I actually find both have their strengths. I love to be in my office because I love the camaraderie and opportunity with people, but I did find leading a team from my home office that we started to develop ways to have camaraderie by doing side chats, by chatting along the day. Back in when I first did this, we were using Yahoo group chat. Things have evolved to where we use Skype and some of the other tools on Microsoft's, I think it's Teams, they call it. But there are ways to make this feel like the office. And one of the things that I think can be really valuable is giving people the opportunity to share what they would normally share at work. So for instance, I can remember talking with someone when we were working remotely about the TV show from the prior night. We talked about football and we talked smack in our text. And then sometimes we would even get on calls and just be like, hey, you got 10 minutes just to shoot the crap? Oh yeah, that sounds good. And we would do that as a way to bridge that gap, because we're all social. Human beings are social by nature, and being forced to work from home is going to be difficult for a lot of people who are the extroverts. And so you need to try to find ways to get, and I'm an extrovert, obviously I'm doing a webinar for people. You need to find ways to give people that outlet if they're extroverts. And you also need to recognize the introverts. So you don't want to mandate some really engaged big time activity. But I know one group that I was working with, they actually were playing a group Scrabble game. And that was their way to break the monotony. And so every couple hours, someone would go on and do another word. I don't know how they did it, but they were doing it. So think outside the box. This is a situation for all of us where we need to start thinking outside the box. What does it look like? How can we be more successful in ways that we haven't been in the past? So open your eyes, open your ears, and ask your employees, what kinds of things are they looking for? How can you support them? What do they miss most? I mean, that would be a great discussion topic. What do they miss most from working at home? And perhaps you can overcome that as more easily than you think. often the things that people are looking for is, I miss you coming around asking me how my family is. Okay, well, guess what? I can do that at the start of the email. I can call you every couple of days and ask you how your kids are. Or I miss seeing the pictures of your kids. Well, you know what? I can have a screensaver. I can send you a picture every day. Remember, we're all trying to get through this. And I think if I can leave you with one thing more than anything else, it's think creatively. Be open to the possibilities. Opportunities will emerge. And then if you're still struggling, I want to give you the opportunity to schedule, apparently Schedule S free. I don't know what that is, but schedule a free 15-minute discovery call. Okay, I told you I wasn't going to sell you, and I'm not going to sell you. What this 15-minute discovery call, and you can go to that link, bob-graham.as.me. You can schedule time for free, and we'll talk about your specific issue. If you're having issues based on something I talked about, or you don't think it can work, or you're struggling with your employees, I'm happy to talk to you. I'm not going to charge you. I want to help you. I want you to see the opportunity here. I want you to see the value. I'm committed to your success. That's why I'm doing this webinar, and that's why I'm going to do additional webinars over the coming weeks, because I have information that I think that can be really valuable to you and how you go forth. So with that, I'm going to close things. Keith, do you have anything else to add?
No, just keep smiling and listen to everything Bob said.
All right, Keith, the check's in the mail. Or I'll Venmo it to you, because you probably can't go to the post office and get the check or go to the bank, right?
Correct.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for your time. Keep your head up, and let's do great things.